And I just started getting questions from kids as Mophead, and so I'd get these notes asking things from, Dear Dr. Mophead, how do I know my poem is good? All the way to, Dear Dr. Mophead, how do I know I am good? And the questions got kind of deeper and deeper, and they were so precious to me that I just collected them all. And after 2 years, I had about 2,500 scrap bits of paper, post-it notes, ripped out refill notes from kids just asking me stuff. And I took 11 of those, what I felt were representative knots, and put them in this book and devised knotty creative writing and drawing exercises to help them loosen their knots.
Welcome to the Research and Reason podcast. Join us as we discuss the latest research, news, and opinion from arts academics at the University of Auckland.
Kia ora koutou, ko Julianne Evans aho. I'm Julianne Evans, the Media Advisor for the Faculty of Arts, and today I'm talking to Professor Selina Tusitala Marsh, a former Poet Laureate, an author, a scholar, an illustrator, and who teaches Pacific literature and creative writing in English and drama. And Selina is the author of several books of poetry, as well as her phenomenally popular Mophead books for people aged 8 to 80. The third one of which, Wot Knot You Got, published by Auckland University Press, is about to be launched. Talofa, Selina.
Talofa lava, Julian.
It's lovely to talk to you.
It's wonderful to be here, and might I just say, ma lole soifua, ma malelangi e mama, and just invite the divine creative spirits to be here between us and whoever's listening.
Thank you. I want to know a bit about Mophead because I happen to know about it, but I think lots of people might not know what Mophead is, how it came to be, how it became so popular, and it started in your head with an idea and with your hair, I believe.
It started with my hair, actually, yes. Well, you mentioned I was a former Poet Laureate, and my tenure was from 2017 to 2019, and it was a wonderful surprise. I didn't know much about the role of Poet Laureate, even though it had been around since 1996. Our first laureate was Bill Manhire. I knew nothing about the story, really, and I thought that's quite surprising, given that I'm an academic in an English department. So if I don't know much about it, how does everybody else know anything about it? It is New Zealand's highest monetary award for being a poet. They are taxpayer dollars, and I just thought the community needs to know that this belongs to them. After all, they're funding it. And so I thought at the end of my tenure, the usual way that a laureate ends their tenureship is to have a book of poems published, kind of, an overview of the last 2 years, and the brief is very loose, so it could just be whatever they like to write about or about being laureate in New Zealand and elsewhere. And I thought I wanted to tell the story of how I was or became the 11th Poet Laureate, the first Pacifica Poet Laureate, the second youngest Poet Laureate, and the fifth woman Poet Laureate, and to kind of marry all those things together and what that meant for the role. For me, I'm actively in schools a lot, and that the reason why I'm in schools a lot is in that first Mophead book. But the idea of telling the story about the laureateship through this kind of creative graphic memoir medium came about when I experienced in my body the narrative arc of the story. And when I was at the investiture ceremony at Matahiwi Marae in 2017, when Jacob Scott, the Māori carver, who carves each laureate their own walking stick or toko, which it's also a talking stick, and he carves it to reflect their aesthetics, their experience, who they are. And when he unveiled mine, he had put a fuwe or a Samoan talking chief's fly whisk on the top of it. And so when he revealed it, I saw this huge walking stick carved with my story, with this huge mop of coconut sinnet fibres. And I also saw a mop, and it took me back all the way to when I was 8 and at Avondale Primary School, and teased for being a mophead with someone, for someone with massive unruly hair that I couldn't quite control. And it was a really, that was my moment. It was an epiphany. It's like, oh, so how did I get from being this, awhakasi, this mixed-blooded young girl in a very multicultural school. I am Samoan, Tuvaluan, Scottish, French and English, with crazy hair, to, occupying this most prestigious role of being the New Zealand Poet Laureate. And I just told the story through Mophead, and she's one out of the box. It was a way also to honour how I was inspired first by the possibilities that poetry held for me in terms of giving myself a voice when I felt like I didn't have one. And in Mophead, I talk about, our informal New Zealand Poet Laureate, our New Zealand bard, Sam Hunt, who has influenced generations of people, all shapes, sizes, classes and colours and creeds. You would have had to just simply not been here in the late 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s to not know about Sam Hunt. Yeah. And so it's also an homage to him. But because he came into my school, and at the time I was 10, I just thought, I need to do that. I need to pay it forward. And so my service for the university includes college kids, prospective university enrollees. But really the emphasis is on that really young stage of transformation and transition at school, planting the seeds early, with kids in primary school and intermediate, because that's when I saw the possibility and I just wanted to pay it forward.
And you really did. How did you decide to illustrate it yourself? Because I guess it's one thing to write it. That's your thing. That's what you're trained to do and what people might expect you to do, even in a different kind of medium, I guess, to poetry. But you've created an entire persona of Mophead that is just, and all of her world, that has just sort of enchanted people. And I can see why it has. But how did you decide you were going to be the one to draw it?
It sounds like one of those kind of mythic beginnings, but I woke up in bed with the idea and wanted to get things down as quickly as possible. So I grabbed my journal and I just roughly sketched out and storyboarded from beginning to end. And, when the muse hits you, you should not interrupt or do anything to disrupt the flow. And so it was, I quickly sketched it in these tiny thumbnail sketches across maybe 10 pages in my journal until I got to the end, because I knew I had to begin with the mop and end with the toko. And it was my way of kind of sorting out the narrative very quickly. I didn't want to get bogged down into writing this kind of plot-driven linear piece. I wanted to quickly get down the inspirational parts of the story because, like many of my colleagues, I do tend to overwrite and I didn't want to lose the kind of life essence of it.
So illustration was the thing that got you there, just having to encapsulate it in a picture. Yeah,
I got there faster with the picture than the words. And then I was also experimenting with different ways of personal organisation. And I had an iPad that I was kind of wanting to figure out, how do I plan my life between paper, because I love planning on paper, but I also, we're all device driven now and we get sent electronic invitations and they can be slotted in. And I was just kind of trying to figure out how I can maximize this iPad. And then I discovered that it could draw. And so I thought, oh, well, why don't I just take from paper to digital screen and begin drawing this? So I didn't have to start over again. I could just kind of put another layer on it, bury another layer, Like it's really easy. And I bought an app called Procreate for $50. It's the same one that I use now. I love it to bits. It doesn't require ongoing subscription fees or anything. But I took that very rough iPad version of Mophead to my publisher, Sam Elworthy, from Auckland University Press. Yes. And I was actually there on other business. I had just completed maybe a 60,000-word memoir of my poet laureate journey, and there are 11 kind of short stories, almost long flash fiction. I know that sounds like kind of a paradox, but based on each of the 11 parts of the Toko Toko. And so he loved the idea and wanted me to keep developing it. And so we were all kind of getting ready to sort out a book contract for the memoir, tentatively titled Toko Toko Tales from the Tusitala. Too much alliteration, I know. And then I was at the, just about to leave, and I was at the door lintel, and I turned around and I said, "Oh, Sam, do you want to see something crazy I've been working on?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah, come on back and sit down." And so I pulled out Mophead, the first version of it, and it was so crazy and so genre-bending that it really intrigued him. And he went, "You know what? This is kind of like capturing the zeitgeist of this nation at the moment." It just seemed so quirky and bespoke. And Jacinda Ardern was in her term as being our first Prime Minister, first of her kind. And he's like, let's go with this. It's kind of like a moppy girl power thing. Let's see where it takes us. And so I parked the memoir and began working on Mophead, the first one. Yeah.
I bet he was so glad he said that, because you've been one of his biggest sellers, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, when it took out a number of awards, but my favourite one, of course, is the Margaret Mahy Supreme Book Award. And Margaret Mahy is children's literature in this country. Her fantastic tales, bizarre and so captivating of children's imaginations. But yeah, this occupation of being what I've now kind of written critically as an academic about, this role of occupying the artist academic. It's the artist starfish academic, and the starfish looks like an asterisk, but the starfish is actually taken from one of my tattoo symbols. In Samoan tattoo symbology, the jellyfish represents woman, and only women may wear it or have it tattooed on their body. And when I asked my tattooist why is this, she said, well, the jellyfish is beautiful to behold but deadly if stood on. This particular jellyfish, right? And so I thought, oh yeah, that belongs in the artist jellyfish academic role, where I do a lead by line. I call it a lead-by-line praxis, where I combine the spoken line, the written line, the drawn line with the blood line and the land line to create these decolonial spaces of empowerment by just simply telling our tales, using all of our lines. That's what Mophead is.
Yeah. And it really has reached out to so many people.
The Obamas have a copy.
Do they?
Well, they have book 1 and 2.
Wow. Because the second Mophead kind of carried on that theme. We'll get to the third one in a second. The second one was all about your trip to see the Queen, is that right? And which was an exciting thing in itself that some people might not know about.
So before I was New Zealand Poet Laureate, I was the Commonwealth Poet for 2016. I was commissioned to write and perform a poem for Her Majesty at Westminster Abbey for Commonwealth Observance Day. And so Mophead 2, T being spelt T-U, which is the Māori word and the Samoan word for stand, tells the tale of what that involved, being from a former colonised nations, both Aotearoa and Samoa and Tuvalu, what it means to stand in that, the heart of the British Empire and serve the Queen. Tricky.
It's a tricky tension.
Tricky tension and tricky politics, actually. But I decided better to represent and be in this creative space and be a bridge. You know, the last 3 letters of Tusitala, my grandfather's name is Ala, which is the Proto-Polynesian word for bridge or pathway, that connecting thing between two things. And I use creativity to kind of embolden and empower and enrich that space. So Mophead 2 I've dubbed Colonialism 101 for kids. So and teachers love it. You know, the feedback that I've received from teachers is that it equates, you know, kids know about bullying. They know about the theme of bullying through Mophead. They know about bullying in their own lives. And then they can see how colonialism was a form of bullying, of unequal power relationships between two sets of people or more. Yeah.
You kind of got the last laugh on that one, though, didn't you? You were the one standing in that space speaking. And,
opening up the conversation. Yeah, which has led to, among other things, an invitation to Buckingham Palace. I'll be in Edinburgh doing some research work on Robert Louis Stevenson, my namesake, and so I get to fly there and be hosted by Queen Camilla for the Commonwealth essay competition, one of the longest, or they say they're the longest essay competition in the Commonwealth. Of course they are. There's 140 different peoples represented in the competition, and I get to be part of that awards.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Your royalty connections continue.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah, in Mophead 2, there is that scene with Harry and Meghan, where Harry stomps my toko on the ground in a playful manner and, you know, says, "You shall not pass," you know, aka Lord of the Rings and Gandalf's famous lines. And that stuck in my head, just like the mop. That there was something there. There was that moment of, you are joking and it is funny.
But it isn't as well.
And it's so not funny.
And it's not. Look, I think we have to get on to the final one now, which is Wot Knot You Got. And that's a bit different. It's a bit of a departure in terms of its style, in terms of how kids or other people can use it, isn't it? It looks different. It's pretty cool.
Yes. Well, since Mophead came out, I've been going into schools even more. I mean, I went into schools as a poet before that because they could tick several boxes with me. I was, you know, an academic, a representative of the university. I was a woman. I was brown. I was a poet. I was accessible. So, you know, always a big presence in schools. And I just started getting questions from kids as Mophead. And so I'd get these notes asking things from, you know, "Dear Dr. Mophead, how do I know my poem is good?" all the way to, "Dear Dr. Mophead, how do I know I am good?" And the questions got kind of deeper and deeper, and they were so precious to me that I just collected them all. And after 2 years, I had about 2,500 scrap bits of paper, post-it notes, ripped out refill notes from kids just asking me stuff. And I took 11 of those, what I felt were representative knots, and put them in this book and devised knotty creative writing and drawing exercises to help them loosen their knots, you know. And of course it's couched in my own big knot, because kids' knots are adults' knots and vice versa as well.
Yeah, they tend to kind of create and cause each other a bit, don't they? Yeah.
And I think the sweet spot with Wot Knot You Got, Mophead's Guide to Life, is I'm vulnerable in it because these kids have given me the gift of their own vulnerability.
It's a very funny and charming book. I've just had a look at it. It's got some really cute little characters in it. I like the Yeti. Not yet, or Yeti. Is that something you said? Because it's all in rhyme as well, isn't it?
It's all in Dr. Seuss rhyme.
It's very Dr. Seuss, yeah.
Yes.
Were you inspired by Dr. Seuss?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I thought
absolutely, so. Yes. And Spike Milligan. But I thought, you know, in the leadership sector, you know, and professional development, we learn about things like growth mindset. And it's like, well, you know, I think Carol Dweck's growth mindset, which is, I can't do this yet, you know. And I thought, well, kids need to know that too. And they need to know it in a quirky way, not a kind of serious, somber way. So I invented the Monster Yeti.
With his spaghetti.
Yeah.
It's lovely. And so it's coming out very soon. And how can people get hold of it? I'm sure people will want to because it's just coming up to Christmas.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's going to be lots of people that want to see that under their trees.
All they have to do is Google Mophead Selina. If they don't put the Selina there, they'll end up somewhere like Plumbing World. So Mophead
And getting a different
Selina.
kind of mop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, look, that's great. Hey, thank you so much for talking to us. And I wish you all the best with that book. What's next? Can we quickly say? Is there anything?
I'm going to finish that memoir.
Good.
I'm going to finish it. It's almost there.
Very good.
Thank you.
Whawhetai, Selina, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Research and Reason podcast. Stay up to date with the Faculty of Arts by following us on social media.